Imagine a man gifted with extraordinary musical talent, a Juilliard-trained pianist whose fingers could create magic on the piano keys. But beneath the surface, something dark was hidden. When Christina Purcell, a devoted mother, was found brutally murdered in her own home, the small town of Greer, South Carolina, was left in shock. The prime suspect? Zachary Hughes, a man with no criminal record, no signs of violence, until now. The trial was set to unravel his secrets, but no one expected what would happen next. In the middle of the courtroom, Hughes stood up and confessed, a chilling revelation that exposed far more than just a murder. What drove him to commit such a horrific act? Was he acting alone? Or was there a deeper conspiracy at play? Stay with us as we reveal the disturbing truth behind this shocking case. Like, comment, and subscribe to uncover more stories that demand justice. South Carolina had seen its fair share of crime, but nothing prepared the quiet town of Greer for the brutal murder of Christina Purcell. A loving mother, a skilled veterinary technician, and a woman with her whole life ahead of her, Christina's life was taken in one of the most violent ways imaginable. On October 13, 2021, police responded to a horrifying crime scene inside Christina's home. The details were gruesome. She had been stabbed multiple times, her body left in a way that suggested a crime of deep rage and personal vengeance. But who could have done this? And why? At first, investigators looked at Christina's relationships. Her fiancé, Jason Meadors, was an immediate person of interest. After all, most violent crimes against women are committed by someone close to them. But as detectives dug deeper, they found someone unexpected lurking in the shadows, a man named Zachary Hughes, a highly trained pianist with no clear motive, no history of violence, and seemingly no connection to Christina. Hughes was a Juilliard-trained pianist, a man known for his musical talent rather than crime. He wasn't Christina's ex, nor was he romantically involved with her. So why was his name surfacing in the investigation? What was he hiding? The deeper detectives went, the more unsettling the case became. Evidence pointed toward Hughes, but the motive remained unclear. The prosecution built a case against him, confident in their evidence. The trial was supposed to be the place where the truth came out, where justice for Christina would be served. But no one was prepared for what happened next. Right in the middle of the trial, as the courtroom held its breath, Zachary Hughes made a chilling confession. He admitted to killing Christina, but he never said why. His confession raised even more questions than it answered. What could drive a man with no criminal past to commit such a heinous act? Was this a crime of passion, or was there something far more sinister behind it? As we dive deeper into this shocking case, one thing is certain: this is not just another murder story. This is a crime that revealed dark secrets, shattered lives, and left an entire community searching for answers. On October 13, 2021, the quiet town of Greer, South Carolina, became the scene of a brutal and senseless crime. Inside her home, Christina Purcell, a 41-year-old veterinary technician and devoted mother, was found murdered in one of the most violent attacks the town had ever seen. She had been stabbed multiple times, her body left in a gruesome state that suggested deep rage, obsession, or a twisted sense of revenge. At first, detectives followed the most obvious leads. Christina was engaged to Jason Meadors, and in cases like these, the fiancé or husband is often the first suspect. But Jason had an airtight alibi. He was out of town at the time of the murder. So, if it wasn't a crime of domestic violence, then what was it? As investigators pieced together Christina's life, a strange name kept appearing: Zachary David Hughes. He wasn't a past lover. He wasn't a jealous ex. He wasn't even a close friend. In fact, on paper, Zachary Hughes was the last person anyone would suspect of murder. He was a classically trained pianist, a graduate of the Juilliard School, one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. He had spent his life performing in concert halls, not sitting in interrogation rooms. He had no criminal record, no violent history, and no apparent connection to Christina. So, why was his DNA at the crime scene? Christina hadn't just been murdered, she had been butchered. The level of overkill suggested something much deeper than a random crime. The number of stab wounds indicated intense personal hatred or obsession. This wasn't just a killing, it was an execution. Police soon discovered that Zachary Hughes had been stalking Christina. His phone records showed an unsettling pattern: calls, messages, and even surveillance of her home. He had been watching her, following her, learning her routines. But the biggest question remained: why? Zachary Hughes had no documented relationship with Christina. Yet he seemed fixated on her. Some reports suggest he might have been jealous or resentful, but of what? There were whispers that his obsession had grown out of a perceived slight or personal rejection. Had Christina unknowingly rejected his advances? Had she been friendly to him in a way that he misinterpreted? One thing was clear: he had been planning this. The evidence against Hughes was overwhelming. His DNA was found at the crime scene. His phone records placed him near Christina's house on multiple occasions before the murder. His search history contained chilling evidence: guides on how to kill quickly, how to clean up a crime scene, and how to avoid getting caught. But what came next shocked everyone. As the trial began, prosecutors built their case, confident that their evidence would convict Hughes. But before they could even present the full case, Hughes did something unexpected: he confessed. Right in the middle of the trial, before the jury, before the judge, before Christina's grieving family, he admitted to the murder. But he never explained why. His lack of remorse, his calm demeanor, and his refusal to give a motive made the crime even more terrifying. Why would a man with no criminal past, no history of violence, and no clear connection to the victim suddenly commit such a brutal crime? Was this just a twisted case of obsession? Or was there a darker secret lurking beneath the surface? One thing was certain: Christina never saw it coming. And Zachary Hughes had no intention of stopping. The courtroom was silent. The air was thick with tension as attorneys presented the brutal details of Christina Parcells' murder. The evidence against Zachary Hughes was overwhelming: his DNA was at the scene, his digital footprint showed obsessive behavior, and his history of stalking Christina was undeniable. Yet, as the trial unfolded, no one expected what would happen next. For weeks, prosecutors meticulously laid out their case, determined to prove that Hughes had planned and executed this horrific crime. Christina's family sat in the gallery, listening to the gut-wrenching details, while Hughes remained eerily composed. He barely showed emotion, as if he was merely a spectator to his own trial. His defense team attempted to cast doubt on the forensic evidence, but the facts were undeniable. Hughes had been near the crime scene, he had searched for ways to kill, and he had left behind enough evidence to erase any reasonable doubt. Then, in a moment that sent shockwaves through the courtroom, Zachary Hughes stood up and confessed. His voice was cold, devoid of remorse. He admitted to breaking into Christina's home, admitted to stabbing her repeatedly, admitted to leaving her in a pool of blood. But he refused to explain why. He gave no motive, no justification, just a chilling acknowledgement that he had done it. Gasps filled the courtroom. Christina's family broke down in tears, stunned by the sudden admission. The prosecution had expected a conviction based on evidence, but now they had something even stronger: a confession in open court. The judge called for a recess, and the defense attorneys scrambled. Why would their client do this? Why throw away any chance of leniency? Some speculated that Hughes wanted control over the narrative. That by confessing, he was making the final move, the final decision in a game only he understood. His attorneys requested a psychological evaluation, arguing that their client was mentally unstable. But the prosecution dismissed this tactic, pointing out that Hughes had shown clear, calculated actions before, during, and after the murder. He had stalked Christina. He had planned the attack. He had covered his tracks, until he didn't. With his confession on record, the trial moved swiftly. The jury deliberated, but the outcome was already sealed. The judge sentenced Hughes to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There would be no second chances, no appeals that could set him free. As Hughes was led away, he didn't look back. He showed no regret, no emotion. Christina's family was left with a hollow victory. Justice had been served, but their daughter, sister, and mother was still gone. Even now, the biggest question remains unanswered. Why? Why did Zachary Hughes fixate on Christina? Why did he feel the need to kill her? Why did he suddenly confess in court when he had spent so much effort covering his tracks? Some questions will never have answers. Some believed Hughes's confession was his way of controlling the narrative, making himself the center of attention one last time. Others speculated that he knew the evidence was airtight and decided to avoid the prolonged spectacle of a trial. Whatever the reason, it didn't bring Christina back. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked Christina's loved ones how they felt about the verdict. Justice was served, her sister said, but it still doesn't feel like enough. Because for those who loved Christina, no sentence would ever be enough. Even with Zachary Hughes behind bars, an unsettling question lingers: could it happen again? Christina Parcell was a talented musician, a devoted mother, and a beloved friend. She lived an ordinary life in an ordinary town, never suspecting that someone she knew harbored a deadly obsession. If a crime this horrific could happen to her, in the safety of her own home, what does that mean for the rest of us? It's easy to believe that justice was served, that the nightmare ended the moment Hughes was sentenced. But the fear doesn't vanish so easily. The reality is that dangerous people don't always look dangerous. And as long as society continues to overlook the warning signs, there will be more victims like Christina. So, what can we do? How do we protect the next Christina? Awareness. Education. Action. We must take threats seriously, encourage people to recognize the early signs of obsession and control, and ensure that victims of stalking or harassment aren't brushed aside. Because if we don't, then yes, it could happen again. Christina Parcell's story shouldn't just be another headline, another case that fades into the background. She was more than a victim, she was a mother, a musician, a friend. And if her tragedy teaches us anything, it's that obsession, unchecked, can turn deadly. This isn't just about one crime. It's about a pattern we see over and over again: possessiveness turning into control, control turning into violence. How many more lives have to be lost before we start recognizing the warning signs? Talk about it. Share Christina's story. Spread awareness about the dangers of unchecked obsession. Listen. If someone you know feels threatened, don't dismiss their fear. Support them. Act. Push for stronger protections against stalking, harassment, and violent crime. Don't let this case be forgotten. Like, share, and comment to keep the conversation alive. Subscribe for more true crime stories that need to be told. Because silence won't stop the next tragedy, awareness will.